Hello, everybody, our xAPI cohort members. It's great to have you here as usual. I know many of you are filtering into this opportunity to hear Duncan kind of kick things around with us today about leveraging xAPI in an LMS. Long time no see. I'm Mark Britz, the Director of Event Programming at the Guild. I've been away a little bit, and Karen has been minding the store as she always does so well the last couple of weeks, but it's good to be here and listen in on this particular session. Just a reminder, Duncan's going to go 30, 35, somewhere around the minutes, and then we have about 10 minutes at the end, and that 10 minutes at the end of the session is your opportunity to share how things are going, any project ideas, new teams that have formed, what's currently in the works and the learnings that you're doing within the cohort. If you can and you want to participate in this, Karen is here, and you can find her in the chat, and you can ping her there about wanting to step up and share a little bit at the end. A couple things just to share with you real quick. Since we are on the topic of the LMS, we have a free tips ebook available to you to allow you to look a little bit deeper in the LMS, what people are doing and what it can do in your selection process for the LMS in your future life. Have a look at it, download it for free. It's very appropriate for our conversation today. Another thing that's really appropriate to mention, of course, is DevLearn. You know, this is the last week to save $100 on your registration. We're coming up next month. Duncan will be there. Many people will be there. We obviously have 2 pre-conference activities around xAPI and several sessions on the program, too. So if you want to deepen your understanding about xAPI and learning technology in general, DevLearn is the place to be. Hope you'll join us in Las Vegas. Okay, and the best way to find out about things like DevLearn, of course, is become a member. It's free, and as you can see here, it will allow you to get updated information about our publications, our discounts that take place, webinars, organizations like this xAPI cohort. Information is shared there all the time. Become a member if you're not already, and make sure you're in the know. Let's see here, and I'm going to turn things over to Duncan and maximize his time with us. So, Duncan, I'm going to drop my slides down, let you pull yours up.
All right. Bear with me 1 second there, and I should be sharing. How's that? All right. Again, thanks, Mark. Glad to be here. I'm always thrilled to join these cohorts. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this group and the opportunity that I've had, with the community and the xAPI specification development over the last several years. It was fun. It's been fun to see some of those early cohorts back in the mid to late 20-teens, I guess, that focused on experimentation, what could be done with xAPI, and some very purpose-built examples that were exciting, but often hard to translate or migrate into new use cases. So it's nice to see how xAPI has moved past that point of obscurity and been normalized with more geek-free, or at least geek-light, tools that open up possibilities for those of us that aren't, day in, day out code slingers. So today I want to talk about a use case that I don't think gets enough focus, but deserves it, and I think will continue to evolve. And that's the role of xAPI inside the LMS, or the LMS interacting with xAPI. I do have the chat up. I will try to keep my eyes on it, but I'm not good at that when going through and presenting. I'll let you know up front. So if I miss something, don't hesitate to call that out, or I'm also glad to, again, to chat. I'll make sure we have some time at the end there. Again, for those of you that I've not had the pleasure to meet, my name is Duncan Welder. In full disclosure mode, I've been working for Risk full-time on LMS implementation for a little bit over 20 years now. And then I did LMS implementation for Marathon Oil and ConocoPhillips before that. So I've spent a long time entrenched in the evil LMS empire. But my partner Art Workentine and I really became enamored with xAPI very early on in those early tin can shootout days that the guild and Rusticy were holding, and started implementing xAPI back in that 0.9 release before the official the official release. So one of the things I always think about with xAPI and why xAPI now is what is it pushing us to do? And I think there are a number of reasons why xAPI is particularly important now, and I'm sure you share a lot of those. I mean, one, it opens us up really to exploring new methods of content delivery. xAPI is an amazing tool for supporting remote workers, reducing some of the challenges with mobile content and performance support delivery. It gives us a great tool for deep content evaluation. I feel like xAPI brings adaptive and personalized learning, more collaborative learning tools to reality. Not that those things couldn't exist before, but with xAPI and the specification required me to be able to read and write statements. It really does give activity providers a lot of options on what I want to pull from my past performance to shape the learning event that I'm going through now, minimize duplication. Uh, Plus, just from a YX API now standpoint, I think our ability over the last few years to analyze huge volumes of data at a reasonable speed has increased. And I think that's a big benefit from the XAPI side. So, again, instead of thinking of xAPI as a new set of capabilities, I always like to think, what is it pushing us to ask? How do we make better decisions because we have data? For too long, I feel like we've rolled out training and we essentially counted the number of people that completed, maybe the number of people that that left without finishing, passing or failing rates. But essentially, we were just measuring, you know, the number of tons of humans trained every year, where we can really start looking at more of that performance now with xAPI. I think it also helps us buy things or source projects with um, greater freedom, because I know that I'm buying a tool that will work with other tools and it will work next year, the year after that. Um, it asks how we get a good line of sight across learners and their activities and accomplishments over the course of their education uh, and their career. And then again, back to that, evaluating training, is what I'm doing as a learning professional useful, right? Am I creating some kind of assets that are valuable, that people go back to? What can I change there? Um, so what does all this have to do with the LMS? Well, one of the things that I think is interesting is that the xAPI specification never mentions a learning management system, where SCORM, by comparison, is really defining that communication between the LMS and content. So xAPI doesn't need an LMS. Content doesn't have to be launched from a browser. You can write xAPI statements from a mobile application or simulation directly to a learning record store. So xAPI offers a great number of opportunities that we've just not had in the past without a lot of custom development. And one of the reasons why interoperability is so critical there. Early on, there was a lot of chatter in the industry that xAPI was going to eliminate the need for learning management systems. And there are some cases where that certainly could be the case if we're really just looking at student performance. But you may have seen this slide before. It's been around for a bit, but to list out a lot of the things that normal LMSs will do: manage schedules, registration, conflict checking, compliance tracking, being able to look at a role and see the certifications and refresher frequencies that are required there. So if I want those things, I really need a tool that's outside of the LRS. right? An LMS or some kind of LMS-like thing, right? Say a learning experience platform that has a specific function that replicates something that you might do inside the LMS there. And you could build all those things out, but I wouldn't encourage anybody to run out and build a new LMS. The Learning Record Store is really about learning records, right? And looking at that historical student performance. There's some other things that can be stored there, but largely it's a activity stream that's looking backwards. What I'd argue is that the LMS is really shifting from a lead role and becoming more of an activity provider working in tandem with your learning records store. Um, I love presenting to this group because I don't have to talk about the benefits of xAPI. I won't belabor this. Learning happens everywhere, on the road, in the field, using simulations, embedded inside performance support tools. When I do a search in YouTube to find a video about something I need to learn more about, those are all great places to access information, self-directed learning that a lot of the times were just neglected in the traditional LMS function. So, looking at a world that is focused on that central learning management system, traditional learning management system, there were things that we just kind of natively captured. Competency assessments or online learning, certainly instructor-led training and that management happened very often there. But there were a lot of things that were missed, right? Social or peer-to-peer learning, simulations often lived outside the LMS. I mentioned I came from the refining industry back when I was a child. So simulators, at that time were dedicated pieces of equipment, hardware appliances that were, in a room someplace that had systems engineers that took care of those. And if we wanted to get that data over into a traditional LMS, you had to have some kind of import, or you're going to manually consolidate all that training data. And again, self-directed learning, I said, very often, at least in my observation, was missed, and I think that is more and more valuable now to us as learners, as technology has advanced there. So, as we evolve, I see the LMS moving from a central role and truly being another xAPI activity provider. It can continue to do the jobs that it does well, facilitating forums or threaded discussion groups, delivering online content, handling scheduling conflicts, managing those instructor-led training records. But as the learning record store or stores ultimately take the central role, the LRS, I've got to be careful about mixing those. The LRS can receive data from your LMS, as long as that LMS is capable of sending xAPI. But that's really not all. I don't want just that LMS data. The LRS can, track data directly from other systems. Say things like e-learning courses that are launched outside of the LMS using the a CMI5 profile or an xAPI profile. Classroom training results can be fed to the LMS. Are fed from the LMS to your LRS for reporting or triggering other events that may need to happen. Games, simulations, again, already mentioned, running outside the LMS can send data directly to an LRS, and then maybe that gets swept in as results to your LMS for whatever reporting is required there. Being able to, and I'm separating out traditional e-learning from micro-learning or more spaced learning, but micro-learning, mobile learning, that follows the same principle. I can now track the sending, say, of a text message to a student containing a PDF to refresh their memory after a course, and track that they actually received and opened that with xAPI, allowing mobile applications to bypass the LMS altogether. So completing performance checklists, on a phone, on a device, and having those directly over to a learning record store. I think about cases like retail managers that are setting up a marketing display, or a restaurant employees that's setting up a line and needs to upload documentation of that through an app, that could all be handled through xAPI to provide evidence of that training, that are evidence of their performance. Um, the other one that I think about is business systems, that largely now are not sending xAPI statements, but there's really no reason that there can't. Is there value in the LRS receiving a statement when my role or my financial approval limit changes in SAP? Well, it certainly does if that's a trigger for me getting additional training or receiving additional training. Because I think ultimately the Learning Record Store will become the official record for all training across the organization. I'm going to share two quick slides that I have to give credit to the ADL for. This is from Brent Smith. And if you don't know Brent, he's one of the critical voices driving the total learning architecture, really across the Department of Defense. So a while back, he was giving a presentation and showed this slide, and said, this is really the current state of the learning ecosystem across the U.S. Armed Services. He said, there's certainly some sharing, but every location and within every branch, there are tools that they use for training, for performance support, for competencies, for different assessments, and few of those systems speak to each other directly. I was surprised. I have a son that's in the Marines, and when he went for his new contract renewal, he truly had to get a 3-ring binder full of certificates to turn in with his application. And I'm thinking, gosh, this is something you should just be able to pull up at the flip of the switch. And I think they're on the right track, but not there yet. And the Department of Defense has had a number of limited success attempts at putting a central LMS in place. And the TLA really takes a different approach. What it says is everyone should use the tools that they need to be successful in their jobs, right? But those tools have to be instrumented with xAPI, because the ADL has established a governance model for vocabulary that allows for the federation of data streams across these systems. So transactional, are I think it was noisy LRS, can collect data. Some statements may be sent to an authoritative LRS for reporting. The xAPI may be anonymized and sent to a specialized LRS just for evaluating training effectiveness or monitoring performance trends. So what are some of the things we can do within the LMS if it is an activity provider, and what are the benefits there? Now, we could probably brainstorm this topic for the rest of the day and never exhaust the list. But with the limited time that we do have this afternoon, what I wanted to do is take a look at 3 little case studies, just at a high level. We're not going to get down into JSON statements. If you want any of that stuff, let me know. I'm glad to share it. And I've got some resources linked on a slide here at the end that I'm glad to provide as well. But just wanted to really talk through these case studies and use that as a way to kind of get the juices flowing there. And we'll start off with using xAPI to evaluate training materials. So, like I mentioned earlier, I always say that xAPI really drives us to ask more questions. What can we do better, more efficiently, more effectively, because we have the ability to track what someone's doing. And evaluating content, I think, is a good example. We can use xAPI to monitor student behavior with content, how they're interacting, to see if there are activities uh, that they use, or if there are activities that they skip, or there are entire sections of content that people bypass. Are there places where questions come up? You might want to see content better streamlined or restructured to change that user experience. Um, so in this first case, our real challenge was a petrochemical company that does a lot of safety training, uh, but they don't see a lot of benefit there. And what they really initially asked was, how do they go back and track student mastery of specific objectives rather than looking at courses, right? Because they have courses that cover various topics. You come in, you pass with a 70, you move on. And you don't really know if someone uh, has a good understanding, a good grasp of all of those different elements there, because there's no tie back between a question a question and an objective. So what they did was update their questions so that they followed the CMI interaction profile samples on GitHub, and included in the extensions an objective for each question. So if you look at this slide and you see that long bar at the top that says unknown, that's all their score data, right? Because all of the questions went into this unknown category. We could have titled it anything on the report. But then those shorter bars below are from the data where they're coming in and they have those questions organized or tagged by objective, and now we can see the success rate there. They can drill down into those reports and look at it at an individual person. Don't let me oversimplify that process. They discovered, oh gosh, just as you probably expect, they had objectives that they never tested on. They had test questions that they never provided the content, but still asked the question. So there's a lot of deep dive exploratory work really in their design and development that had to be done. But eventually they got the data and they went a step farther. So they took Microsoft Flow to move the non-xAPI data from their safety system, combine that with the xAPI data in Power BI to create supervisor dashboards that weren't just showing training objectives, mastered, but they're also looking at checklists, again, performance checklists, field checklists that have been met or not met, competency assessments, again, those objectives, of course, and then, really all of the activities, the what I think of as lesson activities for content. Most of that is online, but also some instructor led there, and then they're combining that. You see these other tiny charts that you can barely see. With safety data. So not even coming from a learning related system, but it was something that they wanted to have displayed all together, and make available for supervisors. So the way that they did this, or got to this point, right, is setting up a reporting database. That reporting database is taking content from the LRS. The LMS is feeding both the reporting database and the LRS. Then you have your outside systems, that safety management system, that incident reporting system. All of those are gathering data there together. And then they've used Power BI to create those visualizations. So again, a good way of tying all those different pieces together because we have access and we can leverage that xAPI data. Another one, that example, is really a challenge that a different client had around more social learning capture. Now, there was already function that they had inside their system. This is a healthcare group, and they wanted to track blog and forum activities. So they ran cohorts of employees through months-long programs, and facilitators would post questions, set up polls, students could pose questions, answers got voted up, voted down, all those normal things that you do in a asynchronous kind of threaded discussion group. So the benefit was this forum is completely instrumented with xAPI, and there's a profile that's out for blogs and forums. So if something that needs to be replicated in a different system, that's easy enough to do. So in tracking all this behavior, they certainly were interested in overall usage, right? Who joined, who posted, who replied, but they really wanted to see deeper than that. They wanted to know who their star performers were. They wanted to know whose responses were being accepted or voted up. They wanted to look for learning opportunities. So what topics were being raised that people struggled with, or maybe a question gets posed and no one has an answer, or someone does answer and has some kind of conceptual error that they could head off and straighten out. So what they did with that xAPI data is went and, rather than creating a traditional report or leaderboard, this person has done more, had more responses than anyone else, they used an interactive kind of visualization where the nodes on that chart will get larger as there are more interactions with a particular topic, or the thread, the line between the nodes, maybe a student and a topic, will grow based on the number of interactions there that are seen there. So good visual way of looking at lots of data without being too messy on its own. But again, the bigger challenge is that in the xAPI statements, we had a person's name and their unique identifier. In this case, it was an employee ID versus a inbox designation, but they didn't have a good way of grouping students together. So this is a picture of the filter there, where I can go in and say, I don't want to see all students. I just want to see the people that I supervise, or maybe just the people in a particular department or people in a particular location that I want to report on. And this is data that could be stored in the LRS, right? Legitimately, there's an agent profile, but instead of loading all of that, let's say student organizational data, not really demographic data, into their LRS and having to keep it in a separate place, that's already coming in from their HR system and going into their LMS. So again, what we did there is, working with them, is they have a xAPI reporting database that is taking the interactions with the blogs and the forums out of the LRS, and then it's taking the breakdown of students, where they belong inside the organization, who they report to, from the LRS. I'm sorry, from the LMS, to be able to provide that additional filtering and work there. So again, another good example of just being able to tie those different elements in together. The final example that I wanted to take a look at was a group that hated their LMS, like really hated it. And then I told you, I've been in the LMS business now for 20 something years. Plenty of people hate their LMS, but both their HR group and training group said their project would absolutely fail if they required employees to log into a computer or to get on the computer and log into the LMS. They had about 6,000 first-line supervisors. They're spread out all over the U.S. and Canada. They do field service for manufacturing and chemical plants. So it's mostly employees either working solo or in small groups, out of a truck with a toolbox, right? So this is our audience, and they want to try to limit some of the turnover. Well, by the time that we got involved, they'd already engaged a company to create a space learning program for leaders. There's a whole series of modules that they were going to go out, every 3 days, every 10 days, depending on the topic. Planning to deliver it by cell phone. And then they realized, oh gosh, I can create this content, but I have no way of tracking it. And that's how we got involved. So chatting with that design and development team, asked if they could publish that content as CMI5. They were already using Rise to develop, for a mobile platform, an adaptive platform. So republishing from SCORM to CMI5 was an easy task. And with that, the solution really fell in place. What we did was set up a mailer that would send a link directly to the content module by text message, and it would have an embedded token that identified the actor and the course information, because everybody's timing was different on how long it takes to complete a module. Those links are unique. And in the process, what the LMS does is still tracking the completion behind the scene and determining that, I need module 6 delivered to me today, and you need module 12 delivered to you today. But it simply passes that information off to that mailer. The student gets a text message, completes the content, it's written back to the LRS. Now, the LMS still needs to get that completion record. So it's just waiting and watching the learning record store. And when the learning record store gets a completion for one of these modules, with passing or failing, then it updates the student record in the LMS, because that may initiate the countdown for the next piece of that space learning content. Best of all, no one had to log into anything outside of unlocking their own cell phone, which was not a big challenge for them. The other thing that I found interesting, particularly in this case, was the completion rates were about 2/3 better for the employees that were receiving training via text, because there was a small subset that opted out and wanted email. So they followed very similar process. They'd get an email and would take that training on their computer. Now, that could be because the people that opted out of the text messages didn't know they could open up email on their phone. So I certainly can't correlate these things together, find any certain hard causality between them. But the new delivery method was adopted very, very quickly, and it helped provide their results. So again, with that, where do we go from here? I think one is we start looking at opportunities to really re-examine all the tools in our toolbox and say, if we had the ability to develop the learning experience the best way possible for the student, whether that's in line with their existing job, if it's something where they go away, they have some kind of dedicated or immersive space. If there are no limitations, what would I do? And then we start ratcheting back to figure out what really is realistic. Then how do I focus on that individual learner's need? Can I use the capabilities of xAPI for more personalization? Since, I can launch a training module today that can be authorized to go read my performance in a training module from last year and say, all right, Duncan already met this particular objective, so maybe I'll just give the option of testing out of that, where if I'm a new student, I don't get that opportunity. And then ultimately, how do we use data to make better decisions? And this is something I was talking to Mark about. I'm expanding on right now. So we have a presentation. I'm going to plug my presentation for DevLearn that will continue on, getting more deeply into the weeds of how we can take that data and visualize it or leverage it for making better business decisions. So with that, I mentioned that I have some resources there. I'll of course make this slide deck available, and the session's being recorded. So if there's anything there that you need, the xAPI profile server, ADL's TLA, explanation, some different magazine and blog articles there with some how-tos that do get down into the actual JSON samples. And of course, if there's anything that you need, I am super easy to find. I was just taking a look over to see if there were any questions there, but it seems very, very quiet. Is there anything that I can answer? Wow. This is the problem with the afternoon spot, right? The post lunch spot.
I don't
All
think so. Yeah, you just covered everything so incredibly well. I really do. So thank you
oh,
for that.
um,
And if you have any questions, keep them coming. We're going to kind of transition a little bit to our check-in, cohort check-in. I'm going to get our first person here, if I
all
spell
right.
his name
Well, I'm going to
correctly.
drop onto mute then, and just be an observer to learn about the great stuff that you guys have been working on in the cohort. So, again, thank you very much for allowing me to participate.
Thank you, Duncan. It's always a great time when you're here. You give us so much information. It's wonderful. So I've invited our first person, Larissa, if she would like to accept my invitation and come on stage here. And it says that you're here, but I'm not seeing you yet, Larissa. Hopefully, there you are. There,
Oh,
now you're coming on. Wonderful. Hi, Larissa.
hello there.
Hello. Did you want to share your camera?
Yes, I thought I did. Oh, here we go. Oh, there we go.
There you go. Oh, lovely plants. Yeah, hi. Lovely plants. I wanted to bring Larissa. I think if you've been in the Slack workspace, she posted in the xAPI beginners, and she did post in #main where we have everything. She was super excited, and I want her to share with you what she's done. This will make such an encouragement for all of you who are new to xAPI. So take it away, Larissa.
Thank you so much. Yes, so it's so nice to meet everyone virtually here. So my name is Larissa, and I am a complete beginner. And I'm excited to learn so much and to deepen my skills. So I'm currently working on two projects: a storyline course about low to no cost resources for getting started with xAPI, which would be dedicated to freelance instructional designers like me. So people who might not have a lot of resources to access fancy LRS and LMS and all of that, but who do want to get started with that. So, but my second project is what I'm most excited about. So while I was going down the rabbit hole on xapi.com, I discovered the xAPI bookmarklet tool. And that was new for me, but it might not be for many other people here, but it was new for me. So it is basically a tool which allows you to create your own personal data locker. So basically, you just install the tool on your computer and you create a free LRS, which is very easy. And then anytime you read something, some professional learning or access some professional learning online, from videos to blogs to articles to social media, you can choose to just bookmark it. So it's part of your personal data locker. And if you want to, you can share that with other people or add it to your resume or portfolio. So I got excited about the tool because it's very easy to use. It's great for a beginner like me. And so I want to test it out during this cohort. And if there are other beginners who would like to test it out with me, I thought maybe a good structure, maybe we could have one or two check-ins and a reflection at the end. And if there are any other ideas we could collaborate with, I'm a complete beginner, but I'm very excited to dive in, and I hope to collaborate with others. So yeah, so anyways, that's what I'm working on. And thank you so much. And it's nice to meet everybody.
That's wonderful, Larissa. I'm so glad you shared that with us. People come into the cohort at all different levels, and if you're a newbie and you find something, you get excited, just like Larissa. And I think that is absolutely wonderful that she was able to share that with us. So thanks so much,
Thank you so
Larissa.
much. Definitely.
And then if you do want to share things, you can hop out to the lounge at the tables because they're available 24/7 as long as the cohort is on. So you can meet whenever, you can meet with your teams, you can meet and, kind of discuss things. So take Larissa up on her suggestion, any other newbies, and maybe you can get together in the lounge.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope
Thank
to
you.
have the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. I have brought our next person on stage, and that person is David. And David, we would be interested to hear. I know you posted a storyboard, a really quick storyboard doc for the design thinking and gamification team. So if you want to share a little bit about that, we would love to hear.
Yeah, sure. You hear me?
Yep,
Oh,
we
okay,
hear you.
great. Okay, cool. So last week we worked on a proposal document. Let me just share it. Share screen. Something like that. So we had the idea of creating an xAPI escape room. So we just brainstormed about what exactly that we would like to see. And right now, once I've completed, we put some suggestions about what kind of activities that we want to put in. And right now I'm at the, I think I have to show another storyboard stage. Escape room. I think it's this one. Yeah. So I just started this today. Right now it's like I have to gather up all the xAPI verb statements from the CMI5 and gamification profiles. And then after I'm done with the storyboard, I could just insert that in to the storyboard. And I already just did a quick SketchUp of a sample office, which kind of looks like my own computer downstairs at my house. But anyway, so basically you just click on several of the items on the computers. Like it's going to be something like 2D, but I'd like to put some 3GS hopefully in the future, but it's like, it's all time permitting. So anyway, plan to do this in Storyline. And if I could get some help with our fellow xAPI cohort members, like just insert what should we be tracked. And I'm not at the stage where I could determine what the outcomes would be, but I would really appreciate if there's ideas about what kind of dashboards or something like that we'd like to add to the end. And so that's where I'm at. So we can meet right after this meeting and let's just have a little discussion. Thanks. Can't hear you.
Thank you for that, David. It was my time not to turn my microphone on because I posted your team name in chat. And so if anybody is interested in following what they're doing, go ahead and join that Slack channel in the workspace. Help out, join the team, figure out what you'd like to do. And as David said, that he's going to be in the lounge after this. And we are, he'll be talking about what he's doing. He looks like he's got some great documents there to go over. And it's great. So we do have a few questions. We're almost out of time, but I think we have some other questions. And thank you so much to the cohort. And just so you know, the questions and the chat are persistent. So even though we're going to end our session in a minute or so, that will be here when you come back and, go to the schedule. You can watch the recording. You can also, as you watch the recording, you can see that chat and see the questions. So you can come back and look and see how things were answered. Unless Duncan, I think Duncan's still with us, but Duncan, if you wanted to pick one question or so to answer while we still have a few minutes, that would be great.
Oh, sure thing. I was just actually typing a response there. There was one question about tracking podcasts, and I guess I don't see any technical challenge of it. I think what I'd want to understand is where you're going to access that content, right? So, is it something where I need a um, a tool, some kind of menu where I can get that podcast and the associated information, or am I using um, a player that is going to send xAPI data? Because then I have the ability to get kind of further deeper in there. I'm thinking about we have a YouTube. Uh, xAPI YouTube. It's not even a player, but essentially a function that will let you send xAPI statements when someone watches a YouTube video. But I have to be able to set it up so that that's what they're launching. It's similar to what's a PDF annotator, where as long as I launch a PDF inside that annotator, then if I make notes or I make highlights, those automatically go to the LRS for reporting.
That is great. And unfortunately, we actually have come to the end of our time.
Sorry.
We've just stepped over a couple minutes, but I know there's some more questions. So if you want to go ahead and type those answers so that people can get them, that's really great. I just want to remind you, thank you so much, Duncan, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, my
Thank you
pleasure.
for that.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate that. And just to remind everybody, we do these cohort check-ins the last 10 minutes of every session. This was week 6, I think it was. So we're halfway through the cohort, and everyone's making some great progress. And as you see, we like to celebrate that. And so please ping me in Slack and say, hey, Karen, I want to be part of the check-in. And we'll get you on stage and you can share with people, because it's so exciting to see when people kind of unlock things or figure things out and go forward and really increase their learning during cohort. So we very much appreciate you sharing that information with us. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye, everyone.